Useless old farts like you are a wasted cost. You're fired.
The newly transferred, younger branch manager, Dave, was a jerk who forced his employees to work unreasonably. As we approached the busy season, I decided to negotiate with Dave, who imposes unreasonable quotas without considering everyone's workload, to see if we could reduce our workload. However, Dave wouldn't hear of it, saying he'd consider it only if I apologized in front of everyone. I understood. I have no choice but to apologize in front of my colleagues. Despite enjoying the spectacle, Dave reneged on his promise. I've put up with Dave's tyranny until now, but it seems this is the end. I chose to resign, dedicating myself to work until my last day. My name is William, 51 years old. My occupation is a banker. My hobby is visiting cafes. A cup of coffee to take a break from work is my favorite part of the day. Having worked in banking since my 20s, I've surpassed 30 years of service. While banking might seem elite and high-earning, it's actually gritty and incredibly demanding. Frequent relocations are common for bankers, usually for fraud and collusion prevention. However, directives from the Financial Services Agency have recently reduced these transfers. I agree that there will be fewer transfers because I thought it would be a hassle to move within a few years due to the transfer and to greet the transfer. I have been working at a branch close to the headquarters for more than 5 years, so I have more familiar faces and customers. However, business remains as busy as ever, and sometimes young bankers leave the company because of the intense workload. At this age, despite higher salary and rank showing personal growth, the intense work and hierarchical pressure have me contemplating a career change. Should I continue working as a bank teller until retirement, or should I take on something else that I want to do? Lately, I've been constantly thinking about my future. In April, a significant transfer brought in Dave as the new branch manager. He's a man who, at the young age of 43, was promoted to branch manager after serving as an assistant branch manager at the previous branch. In a bank where seniority mattered since the announcement of his transfer, his quick promotion had become a topic of discussion among the staff. I heard that Dave was so good that he got a bank award for getting contracts one after another at his previous branch. Our branch, being close to headquarters, is busier, especially with paperwork leading to overtime. We all had high hopes for Dave's leadership. Those hopes were dashed.
I'm Dave, the new branch manager. Don't expect any kindness from me. Everyone works overtime until all meet their quota.
His greeting was a display of arrogance. Being a banker is a demanding job, where even small mistakes can lead to significant losses. That's why supervisors always have to stay on their toes and closely monitor their bankers' work. Dave, too, seemed to be speaking from a place of responsibility.
Hey, you! What's with this incomprehensible report? What happened to your language skills?
I am sorry.
While working on paperwork, Dave suddenly lashed out at a young banker. Dave always sports a sales smile in front of customers. But in front of us, his smile fades and he glares at us like a demon. It was not just a work supervision, but a search for trouble. When he finds the slightest mistake by a banker, he yells at him quite over the top. Even now, he was stingy with reports filled out by a young banker and went out of his way to call them in.
Rewrite this and bring it back.
Yes, sir.
The young banker, tasked with rewriting, looked disheartened. He's not the only one. Especially, the young bankers seem to have caught Dave's attention, and I witnessed scenes where even minor things are blamed. For example, if there is a mistake in the reinspection of documents, he nitpicks and orders a reinspection after confirming that there are no mistakes. The confirmation of no mistakes, such a wasteful clerical task, was frustrating for the bankers. However, if you resist Dave even a little, you'll end up with extra work and overtime, so there was no choice but to obediently follow orders. As a senior banker, I tried to build a relationship between Dave and the bank staff, but the distance between them still did not seem to be getting any closer. Dave's issues don't stop there. Is this just scribbles? Scribbling on important documents?
That's Manager Dave's signature.
Ever since Dave was transferred here, these kinds of interactions have happened many times. Dave is the owner of incredibly messy handwriting. Dave's handwriting is difficult to read, and sometimes it's completely indecipherable like before. At its worst, the ink from his pen would smudge on the paper, making it so frustrating, it felt like tearing it apart. When it was indecipherable, collaborating with other bankers to somehow decipher, it was part of our job. Yet, no one dared to point out Dave's terrible handwriting for fear of being targeted and harassed by him. Moreover, the branch manager had a certain degree of authority over personnel, and opposing him could affect internal transfers and performance evaluations.
Dave's handwriting is the messiest in the branch, but in contrast, William's is really neat.
Oh, really? That's great. Thank you.
Everyone says your handwriting is beautiful. Sometimes we even use it as a model.
I can help but be embarrassed when a junior banker praises me so much. Then, other bankers who overheard our conversation also complimented my neat and skilled handwriting. As everyone was asking me for tips on writing beautifully, I heard Dave clearing his throat. Turning towards the sound, I saw Dave standing imposingly, glaring at me.
You seem to be much admired by your colleagues, William.
Branch manager Dave. Dave saw me in an awkward moment.
I don't know whose handwriting is bad, but are you happy being fawned over for something like that?
I'm overwhelmed. Dave hadn't heard the part about himself. It was a relief, but Dave seemed displeased, seeing me surrounded by my bankers. All bankers had darkened their expressions at Dave's appearance.
If you have time to chat, get back to work.
Yes, sir. Dave's command dispersed us. Interacting with Dave made one thing clear. He resented me for being admired by the bankers. Since noticing Dave's jealousy, I felt uneasy chatting with colleagues, as if being glared at. Unfortunately, I was marked by a troublesome man and lamented inwardly. To climb the corporate ladder or survive in this hierarchical society, one must ingratiate themselves with those above. Everyone was desperately trying not to upset Dave. Since Dave's transfer, the workplace felt very constrained, making it increasingly difficult for me to work here. A few months after Dave's arrival, the hot season approached. As we entered the busy season, the workload was significantly heavier than usual. The other bankers were also showing signs of fatigue. Our stress only increased without even a proper break for coffee. Yet, in the midst of this busy period, Dave would force us to attend drinking parties.
Anyone who doesn't attend will have their performance review marked down at headquarters. A lower evaluation affects not just promotions, but also salary assessments.
It was unclear how serious Dave was, but unable to oppose his threats. We attended the drinking parties exhausted after work. Concerned about the potential for mistakes, I decided to negotiate with Dave to reduce each person's workload. Everyone agreed with my opinion.
Please do it for us, William.
I'll try to negotiate. I decided to call Dave to a secluded place and negotiate with him. I was concerned that if Dave lost his temper in front of the bankers, it would scare everyone and disrupt our work.
What do you want, William? I'm busier than you. Just say what you need.
When it was just the two of us, Dave openly showed his displeasure. I wanted to complain about the sarcastic look on his face, but I didn't call him to argue. Thank you for your time. I have a sincere request. I directly appealed to Dave to reduce the workload per person. This is not just from me, but a collective request from everyone. We don't want to push you, but continuing like this might lead to mistakes. I calmly tried to negotiate with Dave, but he remained silent with his arms folded. Ha! As I tentatively spoke, Dave glared at me sharply.
So, you called me here for this. Stop wasting time on such trivialities and get back to work.
Dave dismissed our plea outright. I got frustrated and stopped him as he was about to leave the place. Please wait. Even just reducing the after-work drinking would help. Everyone is working hard. Please let them go home early and rest. I pleaded earnestly. Dave then smirked, looking at me.
You're over 50, right, William? You're the elder of this branch. It must be tough being relied on by bankers, only when convenient.
That's not true. I rely on them too. Dave changed the subject abruptly, leaving me confused about his point.
You think you're a dependable boss, but it's because of people like you that the younger ones don't grow.
What are you suddenly talking about? I haven't done anything. Dave interrupts me and sticks his finger in my face.
Useless old farts like you are a wasted cost. You're fired.
I couldn't comprehend being told such a thing just for negotiating.
If you don't want to be fired, say it to me in front of everyone. Please let us take a break.
Dave intended to humiliate me in front of everyone. I guess he doesn't like that I, the elder one, am adored by colleagues. How far will he go in ridiculing someone? I was furious, but returning to my colleagues without achieving anything felt pathetic. If I really apologize, will you do me a favor?
Maybe.
I understood. I responded tersely. Despite the vague promise, thinking my submission might ease everyone's burden, I returned with Dave to face the staff. Then I apologized to Dave in front of everyone. Unaware of the situation, they were shocked to see me suddenly apologize.
What are you doing, William?
Ignoring their surprise, Dave looked down at me.
How hilarious.
The sound of a camera shutter came. I saw Dave recording me with his phone. Stop it with the camera, Manager Dave.
Don't you have something to say to me? Otherwise, our deal is off.
Reluctantly, at Dave's insistence, I voiced out, please, reduce everyone's workload. My voice sounded choked. I apologized in front of all the bankers, my face almost on fire with embarrassment and misery.
All right, that's enough entertainment.
So, you'll consider our request. To make everyone's job easier, I followed Dave's unpleasant orders. I genuinely hoped he would grant our request.
Did I say I'd grant it?
Stunned by Dave's response, I realized my efforts were in vain. I clenched my fists and glared at Dave. I can no longer follow you. I will submit my resignation and leave at the end of this month. If I'm going to be fired, I'd rather quit myself. I chose to resign myself rather than be fired.
Are you really quitting? After all the hard work you've put in, you're willing to throw away your career?
Dave seemed amused to hear I was quitting. I prefer to work closely with our customers rather than pursuing promotion. What's important to me in my job is earning the trust of our customers and becoming their best partner. I'll never forget the thrill of a financially struggling customer to whom I'd lent money to get their business on track. That's where I found my satisfaction in being a banker all these years. Not everyone is driven by a desire for advancement. That was my counter-argument. Dave seemed annoyed by my calm demeanor and scowled.
If you're so eager to quit, then quit.
Yes, I will. Though my time with you as manager was short, thank you for your guidance. I returned to my desk. Seeing what had happened, my colleagues were visibly shocked and quickly gathered around me.
William, are you really leaving? Without you, there's no one to stand up to the manager.
Their eyes pleaded with me not to go. Some were new transfers, but I felt sorry for all the friendly faces. However, my mind was made up. From now until my last day, there are various things that need to be done. Saying goodbye to the customers I was responsible for and handing over my duties to another banker, quitting doesn't mean the workload gets any lighter. When I made my final farewell, the reality of leaving my long-term job hit me. On my last day as a banker, I worked harder than ever before. I smoothly handled the teller services and office tasks, and it was just a few hours away from the end of my tenure as a banker.
A $100 million account canceled. What's going on?
Dave's sudden outburst left everyone stunned. Manager, what's wrong with your sudden loud voice?
A major client called to suddenly close their account.
The manager was visibly panicked. The figure of $100 million struck a chord with me. When I mentioned the name of the major client, it turned out to be the very same customer. That customer was under my care.
What?
In fact, I had been handling a major client who favored me. I became responsible for this client on my first day at this branch. The customer initially came to the bank to get a loan for starting a business. Back then, starting from scratch, our trust was thin, but I continued to provide supportive service, hoping their business would succeed. 6 months after receiving the loan, fortunately, the business took off successfully. The primary client was pleased to have trusted me, and from there, they steadily increased their performance, now being the president of a corporation with sales exceeding $70 billion. It was quite challenging, but they have repaid all the borrowed money. Since then, we've built a strong relationship of trust, and the client expressed a desire not to change their representative aside from me. Of course, I have already informed them of my resignation. They were very sorry to hear it, but encouraged me by saying they would help if I ever needed it. And I remembered they said, They would move their money to another bank if I was no longer their account manager. If it became known externally that a major client suddenly canceled, it could lead to strange rumors. At worst, it could affect our bank's credibility.
William, go persuade that client to stop the cancellation right now.
Dave commanded me with a pale face. That's impossible. I'm already leaving. I've informed the customer as well.
Then, have someone else go and negotiate.
Dave commanded the other bankers, but everyone balked at the unreasonable order. I'm quitting anyway, so I'm not afraid of what he says. In that invincible state, I felt no fear towards Dave. If you don't want the cancellation, branch manager Dave should go directly. If you care about the branch's reputation, you, as the manager, should negotiate. Dave looked at me with wide eyes, as if he hadn't expected me to talk back.
There's no need for me to step in.
Dave admits he's good at putting on a sales smile, but not so much at customer service. In that case, albeit reluctantly, please respect the customer's wishes. If you try to retain them forcibly, you might anger them and lose their trust. My advice seemed to hit home, as Dave thought for a moment, then clicked his tongue.
Well, we have other major clients. Losing one isn't a big deal.
Dave's attitude irked me. How could he speak like that when we're entrusted with the customer's significant funds? I nearly blurted out my farts. Dave didn't try to empathize with the customer, prioritizing the branch's sales and his own evaluation instead. All of us expressed our anger towards Dave.
What's with those looks? If you defy me, the branch manager, I'll make sure your evaluations suffer.
Dave glared at us, sensing our expressions. I stepped up to confront Dave. Since I'm leaving, I'll speak my mind. Frankly, your management style is harassment, increasing unnecessary paperwork, extending everyone's overtime, and intimidating the younger staff into submission. Please stop such terrible practices.
Just because you're leaving, you think you can speak insolently? Even after you're gone, I can make your life difficult socially.
Dave showed hostility, glaring at me. A tense standoff began between us. Then, an banker ran over.
Excuse me, has anyone received a credit card from a customer?
What? According to the banker, a major client, an investor, had come to the branch for counter service. They had handed over their credit card during the procedures and forgotten to take it back. Realizing this just after leaving the bank, they hurried back. Then we must return it quickly. Does anyone recall receiving it? No one stepped forward. It seemed no one had any recollection. Dave was nowhere to be seen, having disappeared somewhere. While the customer was waiting, those of us who were free began to search for the card. However, despite looking in every nook and cranny of the bank, we couldn't find it, and the customer became increasingly anxious. This is a mess. Who lost it? Our search for the card was becoming increasingly difficult when another unfortunate event occurred.
William, the auditor is here.
What? At this busy time? To our surprise, an auditor from headquarters had arrived. Neither I nor anyone else had been informed of this during this morning's briefing. Dave was likely the only one who knew, but he was nowhere to be found.
What's going on here?
The auditor looked suspicious of our situation. I explained the circumstances in Dave's absence. Then he suggested that the security cameras could identify who handled it. We quickly reviewed the surveillance footage with security, and there was Dave, seen taking the card. Strictly speaking, another banker was initially handling the customer. However, Dave took the card while the banker was processing and for some reason placed it on top of some documents. Since the documents were still there, I immediately retrieved the card and returned it to the customer. After apologizing deeply, the customer, familiar with me, forgave us with a smile. The resolution of the incident had everyone sighing in relief. However, the question of why Dave had done such a thing still lingered. Then, the very person in question snuck back in. "Where have you been, branch manager? It was a mess here."
I had a bit of a stomach ache, so I was in the bathroom.
Dave said, rubbing his stomach as if to sidestep the issue. When confronted with the security camera footage, proving Dave was the cause, he confessed readily.
I didn't do it on purpose. I just misunderstood and thought it was a customer's forgotten item. I panicked because I feared being caught, so I ran to the bathroom without thinking. Well, if the customer isn't mad, then I guess it's all good.
Despite causing a disruption in everyone's work, Dave was brazen about it. "Manager, look behind you."
Huh.
Prompted by me, he turned around.
Yikes.
What's yikes? Branch Manager Dave.
Upon making eye contact with the auditor, Dave visibly panicked, his legs shaking. "You knew he was coming, didn't you? Why didn't you inform us at the morning briefing?"
I forgot it.
As expected, I sighed in exasperation.
A communication mistake from the branch manager, I see.
At that remark, Dave turned pale. This situation was probably bad for him. After losing a major client worth $100 million and causing a disruption in the banker's work due to his own actions, and with the auditor confirming it via security cameras, there was no escaping the blame. If this blunder became known to headquarters, his evaluation would plummet, endangering his career advancement. Sweating profusely, Dave nervously clasped his hands.
There's still time until the end of the business day. We will discuss this after closing, so please continue with your usual duties until then.
Yes. Afterward, the auditor checked our work and ensured that transactions were conducted fairly. During this time, Dave had none of his usual yelling and pressure. He was like a cat that had encountered a stronger animal in its territory, scared and subdued. If only he was always this subdued, we could work without feeling on edge, making our jobs easier. I even wished someone from headquarters would visit every day. As closing time arrived and all the customers had left, we began the closing tasks.
By the way, William, you're retiring today, aren't you? Thank you for your hard work.
Thank you.
Your performance is well known at headquarters. You're considered the top salesman among the bankers.
My hard work was appreciated by the headquarters. I was embarrassed to learn that.
I've observed your customer service as well, and truly, with your wealth of experience, it was exemplary.
Thank you. I'm truly honored to hear that. Dave, not pleased with me being praised, intruded between me and the auditor with a sleazy grin. He smiled a crude smile, trying to get in the auditor's way.
His good customer service is all thanks to my guidance.
Dave has consistently taken credit for others' hard work. However, Someone objected to his claim.
That's not true. William's customer service has been excellent even before the branch manager transferred here.
A junior banker refuted Dave's statement. Following that, one by one, other bankers began voicing their objections against Dave.
The reason William is resigning is also because of the branch manager. He made William apologize and recorded it on his phone.
The auditor rolled his eyes. Exposed by his bankers, Dave was terribly flustered.
Are all of you ganging up to blame me?
Yes, we are.
Everyone nodded vigorously. Dave realized that no one in the room was there to defend him. The auditor calmly grasped the situation and spoke to Dave.
Branch Manager Dave, please show me the video. You mentioned of someone's apology.
Hesitant to hand over his cell phone, as even he couldn't believe it.
If you refuse, that action will also be entered into the investigation report. It will be considered an act of distrust towards headquarters.
Under his silent pressure, Dave eventually took out his cell phone and played the video saved on his phone. Seeing myself in the video filled me with embarrassment and shame. The auditor, watching the video silently, muttered, "This is terrible."
This is clear harassment. I'll also submit this video to headquarters.
Oh no.
Dave seemed to be already shocked, but I pressed on further. Branch manager, now is the time to denounce everything you've done to us.
What? Hey, stop it. Please.
I exposed his daily misconduct to the auditor. I wasn't the only one harassed by Dave. Dumping work on others, excessive quotas, and verbal abuse causing mental distress to bankers, I spilled all the hardships we endured from Dave.
Hey, William, I was wrong. Please, stop it.
Dave is completely weak and begs for forgiveness. He is terrified that he will be removed from his position as branch manager. It's not just me you should apologize to. Please apologize to everyone here. Dave's pride prevented him from apologizing. Fed up with such a person, I strengthened my tone. Apologize from the bottom of your heart.
Damn, eck.
Dave, with a pained voice, trembled and bowed to each person one by one.
I'm very sorry.
He stands in front of his subordinates and apologizes. It was an act of humiliation for Dave. But if one has wronged others, apologizing is only natural. After apologizing to everyone, Dave had tears in his eyes, his face flushed.
Does this mean you forgive me?
Like a abandoned puppy, the auditor coldly declared.
Just because you apologize doesn't mean your sins are erased. I will report everything to headquarters.
Dave collapsed on the spot, kneeling and sobbing. After the auditor completed the investigation at the branch and compiled the report for headquarters, Dave was soon called to headquarters, and in the meantime, the deputy manager took charge of the branch as acting manager. And the story I heard from a junior went like this. That video served as evidence of harassment, and the branch manager was demoted. Dave was demoted from branch manager to a regular banker. For someone who climbed to the position of branch manager, to fall to a regular banker was unprecedented. But it showed the extent of Dave's misdeeds. The incident became known throughout all branches, and all managers were required to undergo compliance training. It turns out Dave had harassed bankers at his previous branch too. Prompted by this incident, One of the bankers from the previous branch spoke out. A banker who was harassed, forced to work overtime, and ended up hospitalized due to the stress. It also came to light that Dave became a branch manager by taking credit for that person's work, making the situation far more serious than imagined. Dave was set to be transferred to another branch as a demotion, but with things having come this far, the CEO had lost faith in Dave and decided to fire him. The HR personnel and executives who recommended Dave for the branch manager position were also held accountable and received salary cuts as punishment. The bank, having failed to see through Dave's misconduct and character, was sued by the families of the bankers for harassment actions, facing demands for a large sum in damages. From being a high-earning branch manager, Dave suddenly found himself at rock bottom. And yet, Dave's punishment didn't end there. The video of me being forced to apologize somehow leaked to the internet. My face and the background were blurred to obscure the location and the people involved, but the voice off-screen was immediately recognizable as Dave's. Soon after, the internet spread it, and Dave's face and identity were swiftly exposed. The final blow was when Dave's address and family details were leaked. His wife and children left him, and even his parents disowned him. As a result, Dave ended up completely alone, unable to find decent work, living in a rundown apartment, haunted by nightmares. While I find a fervor of online vilification terrifying, realizing it was retaliation from those Dave had tormented made me sever ties with him for good. After resigning, I transitioned from being a banker to owning a cafe. I had always harbored a strong desire to run a cafe while working at the bank. Leaving the bank was the push I needed to pursue the job I always wanted to try. Despite being a small establishment, it turned out close to my ideal, and fulfilling this dream brought me immense joy. Although my income has decreased, I've been liberated from the grueling workload and pressure, living a fulfilling life that blends hobby with work. It's been years since I've had the leisure to brew coffee slowly. Remarkably, upon opening, customers I had served in the past, having heard I started a cafe, came to support me by enjoying a cup of coffee. Among them were professionals in business management, who offered advice and even support. Maintaining connections with these customers after resigning feels like a reward for my service efforts. I am once again glad that I did my best and continued to work as a banker. I offered my coffee to the customers, hoping they would become regulars.